Welcome to Warriors Analysis, where we look at the greatest warriors the world has ever seen in pop culture, media, and history. Today we're looking at the literary classic, universal film legend, Frankenstein's monster. Deep in the lab of Dr. Victor Frankenstein, Henry Frankenstein in the Universal films, the monster was created using a hanged man's corpse and an abnormal brain. This misunderstood creature is brought into a life that he never wanted and forced to sort through it in a very short amount of time. He seems almost gentle and simple, unless angered, where this monster has some impressive feats of strength. In this analysis, we will be looking specifically at the universal version of the character, primarily in both the 1931 Frankenstein and the 1935 Bride of Frankenstein films. In the Universal films, there aren't a ton of full-on battles, but we are able to see some pretty significant power feats from Frankenstein's monster as the films progress, and as he becomes more self-aware. Personality-wise, the monster gets a lot of character development very quickly. When he is first created, he comes off as very simple and childlike, even with his quick-to-anger tantrums. He endured torture from Fritz, who enjoyed tormenting the chained monster. However, when he does escape his creator and finally begins to interact with the other characters in the film, you can see that he's trying to piece everything together. This is seen when he meets the little girl Maria by the water. Learning about floating and being upset when he runs out of flowers, he tries to see if the little girl can float. And unlike with Pennywise the Clown, she doesn't, and the monster panics and runs off. One thing to consider with the monster is that he doesn't initially seem like he wants to be violent and angry. It isn't until he's misunderstood before he plots revenge on his creator. This is shown even more so in The Bride of Frankenstein, where he very quickly picks up mannerisms like some speech, eating, drinking, smoking, a love for music, and most importantly, empathy. In Bride, he feels much more developed and sympathetic. His relationship with the blind man was very symbolic, and his actions toward the end of the film were very thought out and self-aware. In fact, early on, he tries to rescue a young woman from drowning, a clear showing of growth from the first film. In Bride, it is clear that he realizes that he is different and hates it. So when there is the temptation of him getting a companion to be like him, he immediately supports it. When it comes to the monster's abilities, he is clearly above an average human. Some of his feats at first glance don't seem too impressive, but they are worth analyzing. Starting with the first film, the monster, when afraid, overpowers Dr. Waldman and Dr. Frankenstein, who are only able to restrain him with the help of Fritz. At this point, the monster was still very new and deathly afraid of fire. When tormented by Fritz in the cells, the chained monster manages to catch Fritz, murder him, and hang him by the same chains that the monster was confined in. Later, we see him overpower Dr. Waldman and Dr. Frankenstein again, for a while before the powerful sedative he was injected with knocks him out. When the sedative finally wears off, the monster has an opportunity to strangle Dr. Waldman with what appears to be zero effort. I think it's important to mention that the monster does have some stealth abilities, which we first truly see when he sneaks up on Henry's fiancée Elizabeth. He also outmaneuvers an angry mob, isolates Henry, and carries him as if he were carrying a small child. While it doesn't seem to be the case in Bride, which I will cover shortly, the monster doesn't seem to tire in the original film. Henry is carried like a sack of potatoes to the windmill and up multiple ladders. He tangles with Henry once more and tosses him off the top of the windmill with his immense strength. At this point, the monster seems to show Hulk-like tendencies, with impressive strength feats happening when he gets very angry. He's left to burn alive, and we last see him crushed by the collapsing windmill to his apparent end. Of course, that doesn't end up being the case, and this is where we can see his first serious durability feat. Prior to this, we had seen him be whipped, prodded at, and attacked by multiple men, but surviving the windmill's collapse is far more impressive. At the end of Frankenstein, we see the monster freaking out about the fire and being crushed by rubble. When we first see him in The Bride of Frankenstein, we find out that he survived the fire, and besides some noticeable burns, he seems to be okay. One thing to note is that even though the monster has reanimated tissue, he does heal throughout the movie, shown in the meticulous special effects makeup. Even burned and post the debris, he kills the father of Maria, the drowned girl from the first film, easily when he investigates and falls into the windmill. The monster also tosses in Maria's mother for good measure. When the monster explores the world more, we start to see that he's becoming more self-aware. As the movie progresses, we see the monster take a bullet to the arm, and while he does show some instances of this causing him pain throughout the film, it doesn't stop him too much, especially when he's chased by another mob and pretty easily pushes a massive boulder off a ledge, crushing multiple men. He is eventually caught, but only when overwhelmed by at least 50 angry mob members. For another showing of brute force, the monster breaks out of chains when shackled to a chair and tears down 2 doors to escape with his bare hands. We see him break out of chains multiple times throughout the 2 films. He doesn't just break the links off the walls either, he actually breaks the pieces that are shackled around his wrists as well. He consistently and casually beats the snot out of grown adult men. His next major show of strength comes when he escapes into the graveyard, knocking over a tree and multiple gravestones. His last showing of strength is a great one, where he tosses a full-grown man off the top of the laboratory walls. For his major weaknesses, the monster is consistently afraid of fire and very quick to anger. These can be used against him. He can also be affected by powerful sedatives and be overwhelmed by large numbers of enemies. While these are all things that we see in the films, we also see that he can withstand all of these weaknesses. His final demise apparently comes at the end of the film when he destroys the laboratory, Dr. Pretorius, the bride, and himself. Note, I'm not counting the Son of Frankenstein as a continuation of the story due to its plot holes and inconsistencies, although it is possible to surmise that the monster might have survived this like he did when he survived the windmill's collapse. Frankenstein's monster is a tragic character. He experienced great growth and character development in the sequel, where he seemed to have jumped from a toddler's intellect to maybe about a 10-year-old's. He also shows a lot of sadness in his existence and is misunderstood multiple times. One of the saddest lines in the film is where he believes that he was better off dead and that he hates living.
Made me from dead. I love dead. Hate living.
He only agreed to help Pretorius because his childlike mentality believed that he didn't need to be alone anymore. It isn't until he sees the bride's reaction to him that the monster realizes that he will always be alone. Letting Henry and Elizabeth flee, he decides that the monsters, himself, the bride, and Pretorius, are the ones that deserve to die. Boris Karloff had so many subtle showings of emotion when portraying the monster in this film, and that reflects the growth and slow but adapting intellect of the misunderstood creature. It would be interesting to see how intense and powerful the monster could be if he let loose and showed off his full strength. Frankenstein's monster is a sympathetic but very powerful character. Perhaps we'll look at some of the other versions of this character in the future. Thank you for joining me on this 4th episode of Warriors Analysis. Who's next? Thank you guys so much for watching this Warriors Analysis video. I hope that you liked it, and I hope that you check out some of the other Warriors Analysis videos I've done in the past. I'm trying to have a broad range of the types of characters. And if you'd like me to cover any specific characters, why don't you put them in the comments below, and I might actually cover them. Thanks again for watching, and please check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it.